On March 15, 2025, the United States launched airstrikes targeting Houthi leaders in Yemen. These strikes were a direct response to recent Houthi attacks on shipping lanes in the Red Sea. The U.S. asserts that these ships were bound for Israel. The strikes resulted in significant casualties. The Houthi-controlled health ministry reported 31 deaths and 101 injuries. Many of the casualties were civilians, including women and children. The U.S. government defended the strikes. They claimed the action was necessary to protect international shipping and deter further Houthi aggression. The targeting of Houthi leaders, according to U.S. officials, aimed to disrupt the group's command and control structure. This, they argue, will limit their ability to carry out future attacks. However, the strikes have drawn widespread condemnation. Critics argue that they will only escalate the conflict in Yemen. They also point to the high civilian death toll as evidence of the reckless disregard for human life. The United Nations has called for an independent investigation into the strikes. The U.S. response has been met with a mix of support and condemnation from the international community. While some allies have expressed solidarity with the U.S., others have criticized the strikes as counterproductive. The situation in Yemen remains volatile, with no end to the conflict in sight. The Houthi attacks on shipping in the Red Sea are the latest escalation in the ongoing conflict in Yemen. The Houthis, a Shia Muslim group, have been fighting against the Yemeni government since 2014. They view the government as illegitimate and accuse it of being too close to Saudi Arabia. The Houthis have repeatedly targeted shipping in the Red Sea. They claim they are striking back at what they see as Israeli aggression against the Palestinians. The Houthis see themselves as part of a broader resistance movement against Israeli and Western influence in the Middle East. They receive support from Iran, which shares their animosity towards the U.S. and its allies in the region. The Houthi attacks on shipping have raised tensions in the region and beyond. The Red Sea is a vital waterway for global trade, and any disruption to shipping lanes has significant economic implications. Furthermore, the attacks have drawn Israel into the conflict, raising the risk of a wider regional war. The international community has condemned the Houthi attacks and called for a de-escalation of the conflict. However, efforts to find a peaceful resolution have so far been unsuccessful. The Houthis have shown little willingness to compromise, and the Yemeni government, backed by Saudi Arabia, remains determined to crush the rebellion. The U.S. response to the Houthi attacks has been met with a mix of support and condemnation from the international community. Some allies, such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, have expressed support for the U.S. airstrikes. They argue that it was necessary to deter further Houthi aggression. However, other countries, including some U.S. allies, have criticized the strikes as counterproductive. They argue that the strikes will only escalate the conflict and lead to more suffering. The United Nations has called for an independent investigation into the strikes. Iran, which supports the Houthis, has condemned the U.S. airstrikes as a violation of international law. They have vowed to respond decisively to any attack on their interests. Russia, which has also been critical of the U.S. involvement in Yemen, has called for a diplomatic solution to the conflict. The international community is divided on how to address the conflict in Yemen. Some countries believe that military intervention is necessary to defeat the Houthis and restore stability to the country. Others argue that a political solution is the only way to end the conflict. The recent events in Yemen have significant implications for the Middle East and beyond. The conflict in Yemen is often seen as a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, two regional rivals vying for power and influence. The Houthi attacks on shipping in the Red Sea have raised tensions in the region and highlighted the vulnerability of global trade to disruption. The attacks have also drawn Israel into the conflict, raising the risk of a wider regional war. The U.S. airstrikes in Yemen have further complicated the situation. The strikes have been condemned by many in the international community, and they have done little to deter the Houthis. If anything, they have only strengthened the resolve of the Houthis and their Iranian backers. The situation in Yemen is a tragedy for the Yemeni people, who have borne the brunt of the violence. The conflict has created a humanitarian catastrophe, with millions of people displaced and in need of assistance. The international community must work together to find a peaceful solution to the conflict in Yemen. Failure to do so will have dire consequences for the region and the world.